Benzino. This is something I never thought would happen after literally over 20 years of this beef happening, quote unquote. I did a whole documentary on it, Eminem versus Benzino, Who Really Won. And I know the title. If you don't know the Who Really Won series, don't question the title. Just watch the documentary, man. If you haven't seen it, Eminem versus Benzino, Who Really Won. Break down the whole beef of what happened with them. You know, it's over an hour long. It's got like 2 million views, so it's done great. But Benzino has finally, and it's been over 20 years, he never admitted this. Even when I was doing the documentary, I never caught him in admitting this or saying this. He admits that he robbed Eminem of the 5 mic source reviews. So if you don't remember, back then, in the 90s and the early 2000s, the Source magazine had a rating system of mics. If you got 1 mic out of 5, obviously the album was garbage. If you got 2, it was all right. If you got 3, it was right in the middle. 4, great, and then 5 was classic, basically. Not many albums got 5. A lot of albums fall into the 3 and 4 category, and then obviously some fall into 1 and 2. But 5 was like all-time classic. It's certified classic. You know, it's stamped that this is going to be a classic for ages to come. And Eminem never got that. You know, never, not once. And Benzino has finally admitted to the reason why. So he hopped on Matt Hoffa's My Expert Opinion podcast and talked about it. So let's play the clip.
Eminem got some cool songs I like. There's a bunch of shit I don't like. That's every artist.
What's the songs you like?
Stand, Lose Yourself. You know, Stand, Lose Yourself, and it was and you know, I like, you know, Nail in the Coffin was you know what I mean? I listened to Nail in the Coffin.
Did you like it? Did you like it
because
you could relate to it?
I did. No, because the beat was dope and he killed that shit. Like,
yeah.
50, like when 50 came out, like dope. Yeah. Like you can't separate. If you were trying to separate your emotions from when music comes, you're like, no, I'm not gonna. Like then you a real.
Yeah, you gotta analyze it. You gotta.
You know what I'm saying? Like I you know, my thing is, he deserved anybody deserved every piece of success he got. He earned it. It's just that I always looked at hip hop, and mind you, when I was at the Source, I was at the top. I didn't have to answer to nobody, so I felt like my message would get across. Because I even went up to Hot 97, said Russell was a coon, because you know Russell was backing him. Angie and Flex turned on me, and you know one week, you know what I'm saying, like we spending mad money with Hot 97, and Flex broke my son. Man, listen, when Flex dropped the bomb on Bang to This, my first solo, man, I thought I could have died that night. My life would have been straight.
Feeling.
I could have died that night. I could have died that in my life.
Those bombs are so important. I don't think y'all understand.
I didn't when he like, cause men, look, I came out of Made Men. I wasn't gonna be no solo artist, bro. I knew I wasn't the greatest rapper. I knew that, but I also knew I knew how to make music. I made some great music. I knew how to do that. That's why I had dope rappers with me, like Cool Jesus and E Devious was like on your level. Right. You know what I'm saying? With it, you see, they're like, and Jesus. It's funny because he's with us, but he is, and I don't want to say one of y'all, but you understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Hip hop is divided, like I said before, when it comes to genres. Y'all's genre.
I was the blend.
I understand that.
I was the blend.
I understand that, but you lean more to the
lyrical side.
Yeah, of course.
It's the craftiness, but for me, like the older heads didn't want to hear that. They like when I talked the real shit, when I talked about shit that actually happened. That's when I got the reaction. And that's why throughout my battle career, I couldn't just battle niggas and make it up.
Right.
2 things about what Benzino said in this interview that I want to fact check, at least based on my research, based on my documentary and what I looked at, was one, well, this is not really fact checking, but this is clear proof that media outlets have biases and let their emotions get into what kind of product you guys get. This was happening back then when it was way more controlled. Now it's a lot more free, but still, I want to make it very clear. Media outlets have biases. But here is the issue. The ones that you should avoid are the ones that don't admit it. For me, you guys know this, and I'm very clear about this. I have a bias a little bit towards 50. There are some things where I'll have a bias, of course. 50 is my favorite. But I'll admit it. I let you guys know straight up that, hey, there might be a little bias. Like if I mention, I don't know, my favorite albums, whatever the case may be, there's going to be a little bit of a bias there. There's going to be more, I fuck with 50 more than he's my favorite rapper. But there will be literally influencers in the hip hop world, whatever, content creators, platforms that won't admit they have biases. There's so many Jay-Z biases, and I've mentioned this 90 million times. So this Benzino story proves that he let his emotions dictate what their $75 million business, quote unquote, produced in terms of content. Now, he did admit in the interview that, hey, the Nail and Coffin disc was dope, and Eminem's got a few dope records, whatever. But in that moment, in the heat of the battle, he would not admit Eminem had a 5-mic album. And I think it's clear as day that either Marshall Mathers LP or Eminem Show or even both are 5 mics. They're classics, still considered to this day. The fact that those albums never got that speaks volumes about his bias. And also, it could have been just Eminem's skin color. Now, the fact check thing that I want to talk about is I remember the battle starting differently. Benzino said that the battle started because he spit some little lines about, made men or whatever the case may be. I remember those bars, but I remember it starting from Eminem being upset at the fact that the source never gave him 5 mics, because in the Eminem Show, he mentions that. So I think that's where the things kind of, Benzino took wind of that, and then Benzino threw that little jab, and then Eminem said, okay, you want to go? Let's go. And then that's how the whole situation started. I could be wrong, but I remember that part in the research of my documentary, mentioning that that's the way it started. But Benzino says it's different, that he feels like that's the way it started. So I don't know. Benzino, obviously, you might have, memory kind of, because you guys got to remember, even though these people were involved in these things, it's been like 20, 30 years, man. So a lot of them don't remember these situations clear as day. But yeah, the whole, like, that's what I mean, is there is media bias. Eminem never getting 5 mics is definitely a ripoff for Eminem's career. There always is going to be biases in media outlets, and I'm glad Eminem called that out early. It could have been also, a racial thing. Hey, this guy's white. We're never going to give him 5 mics. Who knows what Benzino's real intentions were at that time, but he should have never let his emotions dictate what a company like the Source magazine represents, because, for artists, that was a huge thing at that time. So I'm glad Benzino finally admitted to it, finally said, hey, it's because of this and that. It's because of the battle. I never wanted to give him those 5 mics. Me personally, he even said in the beginning of the clip of this, hey, I would never let my emotions dictate what's great in hip hop, but you did. You let it get to you, and it's unfortunate because Eminem should have got those 5 mics. Now it doesn't really matter because nobody really looks at magazines. Nobody even checks the source. I don't even know if the source is still operating, but at that time, that was a huge thing, man. When you would go in these stores, buy these magazines, and these reviewers, because you have to also remember at that time, these people reviewing the albums would get the albums earlier, before anybody in the public would get them. So sometimes you would read these reviews before the album comes out, so it would get you really hype about the album. So imagine if they don't leave you a great review, or they leave you a medium, decent review. Regardless, that never affected Eminem's sales, because Eminem Show is literally the best-selling hip-hop album of all time. I think you can actually, if you actually check, it might be the best-selling hip-hop album of all time. It sold like over 33 million copies worldwide, something like that, some crazy numbers. So it never affected Eminem's popularity and sales, but in Eminem's hip-hop, world and his respect for it, it did affect him. You could tell, because if he's mentioning on tracks saying, I never got these, this recognition, it definitely affected him, because I'm sure he looked up to the Source magazine and the mic situation a lot. So I'm glad Benzino finally admitted to it. And I don't know, maybe Eminem responds to this and says something like, yeah, I got your ass. I knew this was the case. So, yeah, man, shout out to Benzino for holding accountability to himself and being a grown man and finally admitted to the situation. Definitely dope.